Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie Greenberg, and I'm the current president of UCLA's Real Estate Alumni Group, or REAG. We're honored to have each of you here, and we thank you for joining us for the speaker series with Tom McCarthy and Daniel Dukanian. For those of us unfamiliar with UCLA Real Estate Alumni Group, we're a nonprofit volunteer-run organization, and we work closely with the UCLA Ziman Center to provide alumni networking and educational programming. Membership is open to any UCLA graduate, so if there are any Bruins that are listening that aren't members, I encourage you to check us out. I received a lot of feedback after our last session and happy to connect with any Bruin out there that wants to reach out, so thank you for that. Before we get started, I'd just like to thank a few people. Of course, thank you to the Ziman Center, their support of excellence at UCLA, and their dedication to the organization. To Daniel and our entire REAG board that volunteers their time to put these events together. Thank you to our sponsors, Dan Horowitz, Juniper Square, and CGS3. And finally, thank you, Tom, and your entire team for putting this event together with us. Our moderator today is Daniel Dukanian. Daniel is the principal of the Mulholland Drive Company, a real estate investment and development firm based in LA and with interest in assets across geographies and product types. Daniel has transacted on over $1 billion worth of real estate projects across tenures at New York-based real estate investment banks and development companies in California. He has a bachelor's degree from UCLA and a master's from Columbia University. We're also grateful to have Daniel as one of our most active members on our board. On to Tom McCarthy. Tom McCarthy is the co-president and co-chief investment officer of McCarthy Cook & Co., an LA-based commercial real estate investment and management firm. Founded in 1995 by Mr. McCarthy and Edward W. Cook III, MCC invests in office, mixed-use, medical research, and technology properties in major markets across the Western U.S., leveraging its vertically integrated operating arm to execute value-add and opportunistic business plans. Tom has completed over 5 billion transactions during his tenure at McCarthy Cook. The company's current portfolio encompasses 3.2 million square feet of space in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Mountain View, and Orange County. Prior to founding McCarthy Cook, Mr. McCarthy was senior executive with McGuire Thomas Partners, a predecessor to MPG Trust. Mr. McCarthy is the former chairman of the board of directors and serves on the executive committee of Junior Achievement in Southern California. Through Junior Achievement, Mr. McCarthy teaches economics and entrepreneurship classes, principally in Los Angeles and inner city public schools, which I know he's going to get into later today and I'm excited about. He holds an MBA in finance from Anderson, go Bruins, where he's a member of the board of advisors. He's also a member of the advisory boards of the Ziman Center for Real Estate and the Fink Center for Finance and Investments at UCLA Anderson. He's a member of the board of the Fisher Center for Real Estate and Urban Economics at the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley. He's a member of the Pension Real Estate Association, the Urban Land Institute, and the Real Estate Roundtable. He graduated with honors from California Polytech State University, San Luis Obispo. He's a native of Evanston, Illinois. So he's an incredibly busy person and we're incredibly grateful to have you here. Before I hand it over, just a few quick things. So the session will be somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour, just depending on how long our Q&A goes. Several of you guys have submitted questions ahead of time. We've incorporated all of those into the questions that Daniel will be asking. And then if you have questions during the session, you'll be able to chat them to me. I will be following along. And then during the Q&A session, I will be asking any of the questions that haven't been answered during the session. I am now giving the floor over to Daniel. Thank you both.
Thanks, all right. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Tom, good to have you. Thank you so much for doing this, for your time. So excited to ask you. I have a lot of questions, a lot of content prepared for our discussion with everyone, but wanted to give you a chance to tell you about the company. I know you had some slides prepared, so I'll hand it over to you, and then we can return to some of my questions in more detail afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me give you a little bit of background on McCarthy Cook. My partner Ed Cook and I worked together at McGuire Thomas Partners, as Natalie mentioned, from 1985 to 1995. And in 1995, the United States was going through the final throes of the S&L crisis. And assets were coming to market from those portfolios of busted S&L loans. Private equity shops were emerging, funds were being raised, and new business plans were being put in place. One of the new business plans was promulgated by a little company called Blackstone Real Estate Advisors. At that time, led by a gentleman named John Kukral. John and I were friends, and when he joined Blackstone, he had the challenge with his partners of investing $300 million in their first fund. So he called me up and he goes, "Tom, I need a partner on the West Coast. We need to buy these busted S&L and bank loans and properties. Would you think about doing this with Blackstone?" So I went down the hall to Edward Cook, and I said, "Ed, I got a business proposition and we need to do this." And, but before we did it, I said, "Look, I'm going to go talk to Rob McGuire and see if Rob wants to do it." And Rob said, "I don't want to do that. I want to build new buildings." And so Ed and I got in an airplane and flew to New York, and we sat down with the guys at Blackstone's office on Park Avenue, 345 Park, and we shook hands. And the deal was, Ed and I would start a company. We would be exclusive with Blackstone on all West Coast office transactions that we did, and they would be exclusive with us for a year. That was amazing. And so armed with that, we started looking for transactions. We found one in San Diego that the Bank of California was selling out of its REO portfolio. Called up Blackstone. They looked at it and said, "Okay, we'll do the deal." It was $17 million. And they said to us, "You better get this right, because if it isn't right, it's the last deal we're going to do." Over the next 5 years, we were exclusive one to the other, even though the contract didn't require us to be that.
Wait, can I pause? I think it'll be very interesting for our participants to hear, because in light of the current environment, I'm sure there were a ton of other bidders on that deal, or maybe there weren't at all. I mean, were you scared looking at that deal? What was it looking like? 1990. It was still
it's the same thing you go through every day when you look at a new deal. Of course it's scary, because and it was competitive to a degree. It was kind of funny because the Bank of California REO officer said to me, "I am so tired," he quote, "I am so tired of being beaten up by these fancy Wall Street guys." So you had Goldman and Credit Suisse and Blackstone and Morgan Stanley and all the household names now, but those guys, all those funds were pretty new. And they were, calling the bank and trying to get a deal done. And this poor REO officer felt extremely stressed and pressured by people, harassing him over transactions, including this one. And Ed and I just seemed like kinder and gentler, easier to work with folks. Even though our partner was Blackstone, we were able to get between Blackstone and the bank and make it a really easy transaction for them. And that's how that one went down. It was really based on a relationship. And that's our mantra. We think we are easy to work with, but we're very focused, work very hard. Of course, everybody does, but it's those relationships that matter, and they matter to this day. And we'll talk about that very quickly. But anyway, we got our first deal done with Blackstone. We then went on and did for the next 5 years about $1 billion in transactions up and down California with them. And from there, we grew the portfolio. We sold those transactions. We made good money. Let me put up the track record for a minute, and this will kind of explain where we've gone over 25 years in a nutshell. So McCarthy Cook, 1995 to the present. Our mantra is we do relatively large, relatively few deals. Because Edward and I grew up in a company that did big deals, we had credibility in the big deal realm from the very beginning. And that is a significant advantage for us. So we can play the game with the biggest guys, whether they're public or private, in the world. And we can joint venture with the largest funds and most prestigious funds in the world. So here you have a list of the partners that we have had over the years. Some of these partners, like Blackstone, are now our largest lender. We're actively engaged with JP Morgan, Northwestern Mutual. We just closed out a million-foot portfolio with Morgan Stanley. We just sold in a transaction that we owned with Alliance Bernstein. We have a major project that we own in Orange County called the Met with Prudential, which is PGIM. We're executing a significant redevelopment called Lumen, which we'll talk about more with Northwood. We had an excellent round trip with Rialto up in Silicon Valley, and Reef was a partner of ours on our China Basin project prior to JP Morgan coming in there, and we'll talk about China Basin a little bit. So all of these entities and a few others are long-term investors, and many of them have multiple platforms, different pockets of money that we can take advantage of on different types of transactions. What have we done in 25 years? On the left side, you've got a couple of boxes. Total value of transactions, about $5.5 billion. We've invested about $1.5 billion of equity. Average acquisition has been a little over 100 million. We have reduced the AUM by about 50% in the last 2 years, 3 years. And so we're at about $3 billion right now, looking to grow when it makes sense to grow. We've realized about a 37% gross IRR and a 2.2x multiple with average leverage of about 63%. So we've never been a high leverage player, even though we've done high IRR deals, mainly because we've done very challenging transactions, and some pretty risky deals, difficult deals, and you'll see 2 of those today. We've done about 10 million feet of leasing. We do most of our leasing in-house. We do have outside relationships as well, third-party brokerage relationships, when it makes sense to do so. But when a project is large enough to justify our bringing the leasing in-house, we do it because that's the way we were trained. We feel that we can represent our projects better in general than an outside brokerage team that has many listings. We want our product to be represented by McCarthy Cook in the way that we want it to be marketed. We want to control that relationship with the tenant from the minute we meet them to as long as we can keep them, which is in many cases a long, long time. And we usually become very close friends with the management team of our tenant partners. So it's important that we have that touch on the leasing side, but we also love the third-party brokerage model when it makes sense to do it, and we take good care of our outside brokers. We've done about 1,000 different leases, 1,000 individual leases. We track every one of them, and we use that information in our databases to compare different markets, different buildings, different transactions, different lease clauses. So it's become a very important database as we negotiate the next lease or move into another market or another market cycle. If you value the leases, which is just the addition of all the sum of all the rental payments owed during the term of the lease, it's about $3 billion over those 1,000 leases. We've done a lot of entitlement work in San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, about 3 million feet of entitlements. And we've done a lot of financings, as you'd expect in a portfolio, so probably 40 or 50 financings and about $3.5 billion in debt. So that's a quick run through of what we've done over the years. I think we can go back to you, Daniel, if you want to guide the discussion here a little bit.
Sure. So $3 billion portfolio, a lot of it office. I think what's on everybody's mind is how is it doing right now? And we could talk about, office as a secular trends facing it as well. We had Victor Coleman on a couple of weeks ago. He talked about office. I'm sure you have a different perspective because your tenant base is a little bit different. So how are collections? How's leasing? How's occupancy? I hope I'm not probing too much.
No, not at all. Listen, we're going to tell you the whole story. So for us, we're fortunate. I'm going to tell you in May through today, I'm looking at some notes here. In Northern California, we've collected 99% of all rent due. In Southern California, we've collected 91%. And our lowest project, we're collecting 90. On the rent relief side, we've had 15% of the tenants in our portfolio ask for some kind of relief, and we've granted it in about 20% of the cases. We've said no in the majority of cases.
And how did that go? How did that fly?
Well, as you can tell, they paid the rent.
Paid the rent, right?
Okay, so there's a relatively small percentage of our tenants qualified for triple P. And I think that's, reflective of the credit quality of most of the tenants in the portfolio. We have some massive tenants in it. So for example, in San Francisco, the University of California, San Francisco is our largest single tenant, followed by Lyft. Lyft as a public company it still has a $15 billion, approximately, I'm making that up a little bit, but in that range, market cap and access to capital. Clearly, we're worried about their business plan, but they don't have any debt. So I'm not terribly worried about their ability to pay rent. So we own their headquarters building, which is at China Basin, south of Market near the ballpark.
Which you bought for how much in 1995 or so?
85 million.
And what's it worth today?
Over $1 billion. We've had 5 partners currently own it in a joint venture with JP Morgan with their core fund, unleveraged. So we're not going to have a debt default on any time soon on that project and on any of the others either, I don't think. I think the real question for us is what happens in the next few months. If there's additional, even though our tenants did not take advantage of P3 in most cases, there were some that did, and those that did, there was at least one, I think, of about $10 million. It's an artificial intelligence company in Costa Mesa. And if they burn through their loan and there is not a renewal of the program or some other program that they qualify for, I can see that we can have some increase in defaults. Or if businesses that are basically on life support today, where their principals are funding their operations, even though they don't have government loans, decide that they just can't do that, then we're going to see, issues increase, tenant defaults increase. So I am worried about it, no question. And I'm worried about it, from a broader economic perspective, not just our portfolio, as we all are. So our occupancy in the buildings, however, is on average about 10%. 10% of the employees are actually in their offices. So 90%, nobody's home. And it's probably going to stay that way for the rest of the year, from what we can tell. We have a little bit of an exception in Northern California, UCSF, which our tenants at UCSF are medical uses and research uses, labs, and clinics. They have to come to work. So they're there every day. They're pretty heavily staffed, not as heavily staffed as they would be normally. Leasing activity is, as you would imagine, extremely quiet. We have a few transactions underway in Orange County. We own an 800,000 foot campus in Costa Mesa called the Met, where I'm sitting right now. And we probably have 60,000 feet of leases that we're negotiating, new leases, which I think is amazing. But we've been negotiating them for a long time and nothing's really gotten consummated post-COVID, but we're still talking. Lease renewals, everybody wants something short-term. And we get it, and we want something short-term too. I think the business that we're in is one that is dependent upon a vaccine, and when there is a vaccine, and there's 20 something at least viable or somewhat viable or serious vaccine candidates, and there's probably 150 in total. I guess I read this morning, and there's 2 or 3 that look promising, very promising potentially in the near term. So I'm gonna tell you that we're gonna have a vaccine. When we have a vaccine, I think the world is going to recover slowly. I don't think it's going to be a V-shaped recovery. It feels like the UCLA forecast, which called it a swoosh, kind of a dip. Ed Leamer, I think, was quoted as saying that, and I think that's right. And so we're preparing for that, and we're also trying to gauge the demand for office space when tenants return. And I know there's a lot of talk in our industry, and I think there's a lot of happy talk about, it's not that big a deal because tenants are going to reshuffle their space and they're going to, re-TI, and they're going to provide more space per employee. I think that's true, but unfortunately, I think we're going to get there in a different way, at least over the next few years. And that is simply that companies are not, they've laid off people. There are fewer employees, and unemployment is higher, and that's not going to turn around on day one. So even if there's no readjustment of space, no redevelopment of TIs, there's just going to be fewer people at the workplace. Together with, go ahead.
Yeah, do you think that's going to be, I think, the magic question, right? Do you think that's going to be a temporary shift or a permanent shift? Right?
Yeah, I was talking to Gensler about this over the weekend, one of the partners, and their feeling is that for a creative-ish type high-tech or a tech tenant, a creative tenant, minimum square footage per employee is about 200, up from 100. You'll never go back down to those, intense benching environments again. But at the same time, you can get there either through increased office space, by leasing more space and building it more spaciously, or simply by having fewer bodies come into your existing office and having fewer people at that bench. And in the short term, it's going to be fewer people at the bench or at the workstation, which is not good. But it's a combination of fewer employees because of layoffs and people working from home. But I do think people are returning to the office, and we have found coming back to the office to be the best thing that has happened to our firm all year. The level of creativity, focus, intensity has gone way up. And, these Zoom, conversations are difficult to have because, the technology is wonderful, but we all know the limitations. So you're not getting creative in this context or in this forum. And we have found that we're just a lot nimbler and work better if at least we're together a couple of 3-4 days a week. And we don't have to be together all the time, but it's really made a big difference. And I think people are going to find that when they finally get back to the office.
So it sounds like you think this whole hype about office contracting permanently due to remote work is probably a little overblown. Is that
I think it's overblown, but I also think what I said, happy talk, a lot of developers are saying, yeah, don't worry about this because we're going to lease just as much space going forward because of lack of, increased, space per employee. I think that's probably overblown too.
Got it. Okay. And the two forces you mentioned, one is need for increased space per person versus, like you said, need to have less bodies. Do you see one weighing more than the other? Do you see it just kind of being a wash?
That's the great question. Nobody knows the answer to, and I don't know it. It's going to take time to get there, though. I think that in the short term, we are going to, and this is why everybody's going to do short-term renewals on office, because they don't know what the heck they're doing either. The employers don't know how many people they're going to have in their space, how many people they need to run their businesses, how well they can function with people at home, how comfortable people are being back in the work environment. But again, this all presupposes we have a vaccine.
Right.
And I don't know what the no vaccine model looks like. That one's very difficult to imagine. I don't know how our economy can possibly grow in any significant way until we have that vaccine. And so once we have it, what does that recovery look like? And as we get out in time, depending on the steepness of that recovery and the way employment recovers, and it's all an employment-based, answer. And so if our unemployment returns to single digits, more quickly, the office markets are going to heal, and we'll be okay. But if they don't, it's going to take a long time, and there's going to be pain. How do buildings in markets like downtown LA ever recover? And I have to talk to the guys at Silverstein and see what they're thinking about buying U.S. Bank Tower for $435 million. It's cheap. It costs that. That's what I was at McGuire. I financed that building 5 times on the debt and equity side, and we built it for about $350 million in 1990 actually. So they're buying it for $435 million. Who's going to lease it? So I'm worried about certain markets and certain buildings in certain markets.
So if you said it's going to be a Nike swoosh, in your opinion, does that mean you think that there will be buying opportunities? Prices are going to be low for an extended period. People are going to be hurting. Do you think this is another, 2008 or SNL crisis where you started your career?
Yeah, so this is the head scratcher that we're all having fun with right now, is trying to figure out where values are. And when I say what is the value of an office building today, of any commercial property, of any rent roll today, in any food group, how do you value it? We've got so many different inputs and unknowns. It appears that you look at the public market, and on average, just to take office buildings, office REITs are down 33% from the peak, on average. West Coast office, the way we look at it, sort of our competitive set, including some of the public companies you've talked to, they're down about 30 to 35%. But we don't think private values are down that much. We think, for core trophy buildings, they may be off, who knows, 0 to 10%. But on the other hand, we think that secondary market buildings that do not have the qualities that tenants of today, post-COVID tenants, are going to be looking for, I think those can be, they could really struggle. And they might be down in value. And I use US Bank Tower as an example. A year ago, that building could have traded for $550 million. And today it's trading for $435 million. So there's an example of at least a 25% reduction in value. That's a data point, but there are very few data points. Mm-hmm. But that's a building that I'm personally concerned about in terms of its ability to compete in the market. Only because I'm not sure tenants want to be there. So for the challenge on our side as investors, and on your side, Daniel, and for many of the people on the call, is to pick their spots and look, why do I want to be there? Why do I want to buy that building? Why do I want to build this building?
That was going to be my next question. What sector, property type, maybe it's office, maybe it's a subtype in office, and maybe specific geography, where are you going to be spending the next couple of years on, without giving away your secret sauce?
Right. So McCarthy Cook has certain strengths which we want to capitalize on over the next couple of years. One strength is our long-term track record dealing with and providing office space for tech and media tenants. So we've been in the Bay Area a long time, and we will continue to focus on tech markets. Tech includes tech media, and our Lumen project in LA is aimed exactly at that market. McCarthy Cook also has a long-term track record in life sciences. So we have been a development partner with UCSF on their Mission Bay campus for 10 years. We built and own the only privately owned building on the Mission Bay campus called the Sandler Neuroscience Center, which is a $200 million, 225,000 square foot state-of-the-art life science building that houses 3 Nobel laureate scientists and their teams of researchers who are doing brain research. Includes vivarium and all modalities of labs that you can imagine. And we're going to grow that business, and we're going to leverage that business. The life science space is getting a lot of coverage right now, and everybody's talking about being in it. Not that many firms actually have long-term experience in managing, designing, developing, and managing on a day-to-day basis sophisticated lab space. We do. So it's a natural for us to build that business. And we're actively pursuing transactions in that space. We've been bidding on properties. We're aligning ourselves with both designers, architects, contractors, and capital sources to pursue that business potentially on a national basis. So we want to be in that game, and we are in that game, but we're going to dial that up over the next couple of years. On the office side, we're going to be very careful. Right now, we are focused on core trophy transactions with great rent rolls that are going to see us through the next few years. And we're going to do those transactions with our big institutional partners who want to buy unleveraged or lowly leveraged core assets. So we're not going to be, we will look at opportunistic transactions. We're going to be looking at broken deals as they come, if they come, and when they come. But we're not looking just to buy cheap. We want to buy quality. We want to buy assets that either will appeal to the tenants of today, or we can convert them, we can upgrade them, redevelop them to appeal to those tenants in those markets. So we're being very careful, but we're ready to go.
Will there be good deals there though, right? Because I mean, you said 36 IRR track record. I mean, there's no way you can hit those returns on trophy Class A with good rent rolls. Is that right?
Yeah, right. And we don't need to, right? We don't need to. We can't chase the track record. That was a track record developed at a time when there was incredible dislocation in what would become a growing economy with many bumps along the way, in markets that matured, such as Silicon Valley and San Francisco and parts of Los Angeles and San Diego. It's a different world. So we have to play the game in a different way. But that's what we're building ourselves to do.
So if I'm summarizing what you're saying, maybe there's opportunity, but you don't see it quite yet to kind of.
I think it's dangerous. Yeah, and I don't think because we don't know where demand is going to and when demand is going to resurface.
It doesn't feel like 1995 to you when you started, when were deals out there.
No, it does not feel like 1995. It doesn't feel like 2001. It doesn't feel like 2008. This is a different deal altogether, right? Because we've got this exogenous disaster that's, the pandemic. And the first time we've ever dealt with this. I hope it's the last time.
Certainly. I'd like to give a chance for you to talk about the 2 projects, the Lumen and the China Basin. I know you have some.
Yeah, let's do that. We're going to put up some slides here. We're going to take a little trip. And we're going to start at Olympic and Sawtelle. And this is our project called Lumen West LA, Workplace Illuminated. And we've designed this building, although we started it many years ago in concept. to appeal to the tenants of today, as you'll see as we go forward. Location you all know about. There's an incredible number of restaurants a block away on Sawtelle, Japantown, and you know the location with the freeways, Westwood and Culver City. You also know this story as well, how many techtainment firms are located in the general area. This is kind of in the heart of it. But today, the project has been called Trident Center since it was developed in the early 80s as the home for two law firms, Manette Phelps and Mitchell Silberberg. Clearly there was certain lack of, shall we say, creativity that went into the architecture, or maybe there was too much creativity. I'm not sure where they came up with this beautiful design. But a few features to look at. One, it's a large city block. Two, it has a substantial amount of parking, which you could never produce today. And it has a private 1-acre recreation deck on the top of the parking structure at the back of the project. From that deck, which was developed with 2 tennis courts and a basketball court and some grass that nobody ever stepped on. You have views of the mountains in Brentwood, UCLA, Century City, and peaky little blue water views of the ocean, believe it or not. So it's a unique asset. This is what it looks like if you drive by the project today. We just erected a tower crane last week, which will soon be taking the skin off the building. Most of the glass has been removed, and that building, obviously the buildings are vacant. Manette and Mitchell moved to the towers in Century City, and we're about to dismantle this curtain wall. Let me show you what it's going to look like. Here's the problem. The problem that we have with the building is the floor plates, and the existing floor plates are in yellow. Some folks in our shop call them the peanut. I think that's a pretty good descriptor. Those green circles indicate pinch points. So this crazy floor plate was designed for these law firms to, create maximum, I guess, corner offices, or at least offices on glass, without regard to bay depths, or little regard to bay depths. They also managed to create a spread out core, so you can see stairwells that are out in space, kind of hanging there. Very inefficient. You'd never design a building like this today. So we looked at this building as a great opportunity and a great location to redevelop it. We originally acquired the building in 2005 in a partnership with JP Morgan for $92 million. In 2013, we recapitalized the project with Northwood for $150 million. McCarthy Cook stayed in, and we, my partner Edward Cook and I, had kind of been thinking about the future of this project. We had been dreaming about redeveloping this asset. Northwood, we bought it. The business plan wasn't to redevelop it. The business plan was to renew the leases with the tenants when they rolled in 2020, and then sell the asset. But along the way, we and Northwood decided that the dream scheme, in fact, made sense, and that we should pursue a redevelopment of this project. So we looked at the asset as it existed, and we looked at these floor plates and groaned. They were horrible. But a very creative team at Gensler helped us imagine what these floor plates could be if we added about 110,000 square feet as the city measures it, probably more like 200,000 feet the way BOMA measures it, of space to these floors.
When you market it, are you leasing 200,000 square feet, not 110,000, I imagine?
Yeah, okay, of course. And so the blue is new space that we're adding. We're enlarging the floors. By the way, folks, I don't think a project like this has ever been done in LA. So watch what happens here shortly. And we are connecting, every floor will be connected with a bridge or a patio outdoor area. So here we've cut away the west building, and you're looking back at a section of the east building, underground parking, 2 levels, and then towards the left side of the screen, you have above grade parking, 3 levels over the 2. You have expanded the building out to Olympic Boulevard. You have connected every floor with bridges, and you can see the green, light green shading where it says office. That is new space that connects the east building to the west building. On floor 4, as an example, you have a deck which connects the 2 buildings, outdoor deck. On floor 5, you have an enclosed bridge, which is 35 feet. Those bridges are 35 feet wide. That's plannable space. 13-foot floor to ceiling heights. Probably, realistically, the glazing is going to be 9-foot floor to ceiling, floor to beam, glass panels. This will probably be the last glass building built in Los Angeles because of energy codes. The glass that we're using is coming from Switzerland and Germany, triple paned glass. This particular glass units have never been used in Los Angeles before, and rarely in the United States. Very high tech, very expensive glass. You can see a terrace above the bridge. So on the floors, such as floor 6, the 6th, the 8th, and the 10th floors are connected to the opposing building with an outdoor terrace. So it's a bridge, but it's outdoors. It'll have glass walls around it. It's protected overhead by that big awning that you see at the top, which connects the 2 buildings as well, but it will be outdoors, and that is important. Let's move on. And I've got Ben Lankin out in my office is running these slides, so I'm thanking Ben for his hard work. He put this presentation together. So when we're done with the project, this is a rendering of what it will look like. It's going to be a completely different environment. We will have over an acre of outdoor space. It's going to be about 1.25 acres of outdoor space in various locations, including the deck at the back of the building. Go ahead, Ben. This is the entrance on Olympic Boulevard. You'll notice the curtain wall is serrated, so it's not a flat glass panel, but rather it's stepped. That's about a 9-inch serration to add some interest and reduce reflectivity, which is a big issue on glass buildings. The Korean Air building in downtown LA is a beautiful building, but it failed, in our opinion, with the glass that they selected. Way too reflective. Way too reflective. And so we are trying to defeat that reflectivity, but also get the performance out of the glass. That was a shot of the courtyard. Here's our 1-acre private deck. We have reimagined this. We affectionately call it the Japanese beer garden. We have a wonderful relationship with the merchants on Sawtelle, the restaurateurs. And so to the extent we possibly can, we want to pay homage to and respect to the Japanese and other Asian vendors, food vendors. They've just been great partners in this project. But importantly, tenants of the future, this can be customized to meet the needs of any one tenant, but the concept that we show here is outdoor. Get outdoors as much as you possibly can. Luckily, we've got some social distancing going on. This rendering was done a year ago. We don't have any masks, however. But this is an opportunity to imagine the office of the future in a mid-rise environment. This is the 10th floor. Stunning views through the entire area of West LA, including those blue water views of the ocean. Great views of the Getty and Brentwood and back at UCLA. Go Bruins. And this will all take place in the next 2 years. So by 2022, you'll have a new building in West Los Angeles. Project costs about $300 million to build. That we have a construction loan from Blackstone, which we closed late last year. And you'll see huge progress in the next 6 months on this project as that curtain wall comes apart.
So COVID hasn't stopped your plans. You're proceeding. What you said? How much was it? 300 something?
That's a 300 million. Yeah, the construction cost is about 300 million.
And what's the total square footage?
It'll be when we're done about 570,000 square feet.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What rents were you projecting pre-COVID? What are you projecting post-COVID? Is there a big chasm?
We don't know. We don't think so. We think this is such a unique asset that is, but we've included everything in here that we can possibly think that a tenant would want. So, vertical transportation, we have more elevators than any other building. We have more stairwells than any other building. We've got more open space than any other modern building. We're using a state-of-the-art hydronic HVAC system. So it's not blowing air through vents. Nobody else is doing that. So we think this building is we have the ability to build small studios in the ground floor. We could adapt some of the other space for studio work. You can shoot outdoors on your private rec deck. So I think there's just a lot of, we have parking. We can park with valet 5 to 1. We're a half a mile from 2 light rail stops. We're going to provide a shuttle to the light rail. We're, a block from 50 wonderful restaurants. So we just think that it's an asset that's different from the other product that's available in the marketplace. So we're not advertising a big reduction in rents. What are the rents? Mid-7s gross is kind of what we're talking about. So that'd be sort of mid-5s net, maybe mid to high 5s net, something like that.
How does that compare with your major competitors, you think? Or I don't know.
Yeah, Century City is higher. On the best space in Century City is higher. So I think that we're in a pretty good spot. I think that we're a little bit higher than the last deals done in Culver City, but we're pretty constant. But that's pretty consistent with the more current deals that are being done. So I think it's in the zone.
All right. Any other more comments on this project you wanted to go over?
No, that's Lumen, and it's one of those things that we're really proud of, and I think we're making a difference on the skyline of West LA. Certainly better than what's there now. But I think significantly, as all of us pursue our careers, think about redevelopment. The day of tearing stuff down and building it new and digging big holes in the ground, it's just tough to do and shouldn't be done. It's a big waste. It's environmentally unsound. Let's try to redevelop our cities, and I hope that the city of LA and other municipalities become a little more supportive of this type of project, because they've been brutally difficult to work with.
Right. On that note.
Sorry, just a quick question that popped up, and it's related to this project, so I just thought I'd ask it here as opposed to later.
Yeah.
Lumen's located in a transit-oriented development zone. Did you guys receive any TOD benefits, and how much you consider transit in your investments?
We consider transit a lot. We consider walkability a lot. We consider outdoor space a lot. The city, we are in a transit oriented development zone, and we could receive zero benefit from the city for that. In fact, we received a tax in the form, that the Planning Commission at the final meeting to rubber stamp, we only got 100,000 feet of entitlements. It took us 3 years. We did voluminous traffic studies. And you can imagine when you do the math on 100,000 feet, how much traffic that doesn't add to the Olympic corridor, and the freeways, which already have hundreds of thousands of cars a day. If you have 4 cars per 1,000, this is nothing. And that's what the traffic study proved. But we all on this call can do that math mentally. We've just done it. It's insignificant, but that took us 3 years to get that entitlement done through the city. And the Planning Commission in the last meeting decided that we would have to, because our parking garage was too big based on current code, that we would either have to rope off a significant number of spaces, or we would have to put in 150 charging stations when there's no demand for them. So we accepted that penalty, which is going to cost $3 million to build charging stations that currently there's no demand for. Not only is there not demand for it, but the local substation, DWP substation, can't provide power to that many. If we had 150 cars charging at one time, West LA would go dark.
Wow. Sounds incredibly inefficient.
I mean, it's crazy stuff.
God bless California.
God bless California.
Anyway, I'll jump off and let you guys continue.
I think I know you prepared some material for China Basin.
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time, though. I don't know how much more time you can allot to this. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the efforts the company's taking towards social responsibility and diversity and all that. So I'll let you decide which to go into first, or one instead of the other, depending on what.
Listen, I'd love to do, because I think we're all real estate nerds. I just want to show you guys another really cool project. We'll do this really fast. And we're going to take a trip to San Francisco here, and we're south of Market next to the ballpark. You'll see this really fast. And here's why it's fun. What we're doing is, again, another reimagination of a urban campus. We bought this. Go ahead and roll it, Ben. Thank you. That's what it looks like today. The building in question is that long white building. Looks like some in downtown LA that we know well, because it was built by Santa Fe Railroad back in the early 1920s, as a warehouse. Converted to office over time, and of course the neighborhood has changed in the last 25 years, 30 years, to be one of the hottest, hippest, coolest, and most densely urbanized locations in San Francisco. The building in the foreground, kind of the middle ground there, is also part of the campus, in addition to that bigger, beige colored building in the background. That building was built in the 90s. It's about, in this picture, about 300,000 square feet. And now you're going to see what we did a few years ago by expanding a fully occupied building. Again, a project never done before, and literally in the United States, where we had to base isolate the expansion. It was a post-tension concrete building, and our engineers came up with a cool idea of putting shock absorbers between the two buildings, so that the new building, which you see in this picture, is 180,000 square feet of. We designed it as life science space. We leased it to Lyft, but we designed it as life science space, and it could be again in the future if they leave. But it floats on top of that existing building in a seismic event. So it's really a cool design. But we have a challenge, and that challenge is the 435,000 square foot 1922 warehouse building. And it's not up to current seismic code. It's strong vertically, but not laterally. And this is our dream scheme at China Basin, was to bring this building to seismic up to seismic standards. So Nabi Youssef and Associates designed, after a lot of work, I can't tell you, we've been working on this for since we bought this building in 1998, we have been working on seismic upgrade ideas, finally hit upon the gemstone. Think about why Notre Dame did not collapse. It was because of the flying buttresses. And so here, Nabi Youssef has designed a buttress scheme. Those steel frames bolted to the outside of the building act as buttresses to hold up the entire structure in a seismic event. And these, there's foundations that go down over 100 feet into the bay mud and through to bedrock. But the buttresses then are attached to the building with steel plates and fiber wrap, such that you can't tell on the inside that the building was even penetrated. It's simply buried into the concrete floor or ceiling, depending on the location. And the loads of the building, the lateral loads of the building in a seismic event are transferred to those buttresses. Now, COVID has conspired to actually help us on this project because that building is vacant. That's his lift's headquarters, and they only have a few people in occupancy. This was designed to do, this seismic upgrade was designed to be implemented when lift was fully occupied. It would have been a lot harder, but we could do it. As it turns out, they're not in occupancy, so we're making tremendous progress on this project. And so we are very proud of this addition, if you will, to the San Francisco office market, because this building will now stand for a long, long time, forever. It's safe. It's just a lot better real estate investment. So this will be done 18 months from now, roughly. And we're really proud of that. So that's another cool adaptive reuse upgrade of an existing building that in another time would have been torn down. Mm. And in the future, we're going to figure out, or maybe figure out what to do with our wharf. We've got 800 feet of wharf on the water. There's only 2 projects in San Francisco on the water, the ferry building and this. And we actually have entitlements for a small marina. So we'll have to dust that off and go through the planning department in the city of San Francisco and others. But maybe someday we'll be launching kayaks back there. But right now we're doing a seismic upgrade. So that's an $80 million project. So we're busy.
I'm curious, Tom, how, I'm sure you do an analysis every time, right? Does it make more sense to just knock it all down and build from scratch versus keep the bones and renovate? And in both those instances, in the Lumen and in this one, it just made sense to spend all that money on seismic retrofit versus building new?
Yeah, well, we think that the $80 million investment, we think the overall project's worth about $1 billion and maybe $1.1 billion. It was probably $1.2 billion before COVID, so let's call it $1 billion to $1.1 billion now. I don't know. It appeared to us very clearly that for an investment of $80 million in a 450,000 foot building, that was a relatively small amount of money to protect its value. So, and the ability, if we knocked it down, getting entitlements to rebuild that, who knows where you'd end up. Right. So it's right on the water and all that stuff. So it just made sense to redevelop it or to upgrade it.
Matt?
We're at time, but I do know that Tom feels very passionately about junior achievement and just the discussions that we've had in preparing for this regarding diversity in real estate. So, yeah. You know, if people need to jump off, completely understand, a quick plug, our next event is going to be August 19th with Stuart Resnick. So please tune in for that. But for those of us who have a few more minutes, please, Tom, tell us a little bit about your involvement and sort of what you're doing with junior achievement.
Yeah, so this is you know, timely, but this is not an issue that is new to me or to McCarthy Cook, but it's never been more timely and never more important. Obviously, the issues that we're dealing with in our country today are extremely important and need to be taken extremely seriously. And we have to face the fact that we have let down a significant part of our society, of our community, in terms of creating opportunities for their careers and their livelihoods and their pursuit of happiness in this democracy. What can we do about it? We have an obligation in the real estate industry to do better than we've done. We haven't done very well in the past. We haven't promoted opportunities for people of different backgrounds and races, and particularly in our inner cities. Everybody on this call has incredible skills and education. My view, and the view of the folks at McCarthy Cook, is that let's take the skills that we have and try to help people advance in their careers, educationally and professionally. So through Junior Achievement, which is a over 100-year-old nonprofit that is dedicated to teaching financial literacy, we have been volunteering in classrooms for 15 years, all over Los Angeles, a few schools in particular, one Hancock Park Elementary School and Crenshaw High School, where we have been involved in the classroom, delivering the JA curriculum, which is a state, it's not about real estate, it's not about what does McCarthy Cook do on a day-to-day basis. It's more about general economics, entrepreneurship, the math and the language arts that go together with understanding what the business community is about, what competitive markets look like, what is the nomenclature, how does one prepare for a job, what are interview skills, how to write a resume, all of that kind of stuff, international trade. We talk about all these issues, but most significantly of late, JA has developed a new program, which I think many on this call will find interesting, called 3DE, 3D education, three-dimensional education. And what it is a case study program designed for high school students, where local businesses, could be your business, in fact, and I hope it will be one of your or many of your businesses, where business leaders work with JA to write a case, like a business school case. And that case is presented to and shared with the students in high school, aimed at inner city high schools, schools with disadvantaged students, to help them begin to understand the thought process that goes behind analyzing business opportunities, the goal being to inspire them to pursue entrepreneurship or education in business and finance, marketing, technology, a reason to stay in school and work hard. It's also a wonderful opportunity for volunteerism, for people like us to get in the classroom with those students, to present the cases, interact with them, much like we did at business school. We all are familiar, those of us who went through that type of program, we're familiar with case studies, and this is a new program. JA offers grade level appropriate volunteer opportunities K through 12. This is a special program and a new program. Austin Butner, Superintendent of Schools in LAUSD, has endorsed the program. It's going to be rolling out at Crenshaw High School as soon as we can get back in the classroom. Ben Lankenau, my team here at McCarthy Cook, who's on this call with me and has been doing the technology, thank you, Ben. He and I have written a case study on Lumen. We're going to debut that with the 3DE team and refine it and write it up as a real case. So we're going to deliver that at some point in the future, hopefully in person. If not, it'll be in a Zoom presentation of some sort. So we all need to do what we can do, and that's what we can do. And would love to have you involved, whether in the classroom teaching 5th grade economics. It's really cool and fun, and we do that every year too. So
We'll send out a link to the participants when we send sort of our recap and thank you note, so that if anyone does want to get involved, you'll know where to go. So it's more concrete than just, this idea of like actually how to make a change. So thank you for that. Daniel, Tom, we're past time, so we can't even get to many of the questions, but thank you guys both very, very much. I think we had a wonderful and engaged conversation, and I wish you both health and happiness.
Thank you.
Thank you
Take
so
care
much.
and go Bruins. Bye.
Go Bruins.
Bye.
Bye.